Greetings, traveler.
We had a hotfix, so technically not a patch, but when I say patch, people understand. This is just for balance, and this almost always happens very quickly after the new meta happens, because there's stuff that's wildly OP, so let's just dive into what the first changes are. We have Parched Wanderer out, and we have that replaced with Tad. That's fine, right? That's just Murloc struggling a little bit. Parched Wanderer not really making sense. I don't think it's like the biggest change, but it's fine. It's nice. Murlocs in general don't really struggle because the spell build is very good, but like the Murloc cycle build isn't very good. So here we see another reaction to that. Primitive Painter now buffs +1/+2 instead of +1/+1. That is sorely needed. This card is, generally speaking, far too slow. So pretty happy to see that being buffed. Although I think compared to the spell Murloc build, this still isn't very good. That's where you use Mycologist to get a 1/1 that has either Shiny Ring or Azurite Empowerment or even Time Management remembered, and then you just boost your spell damage and you trigger that with Flotsam over and over again with Bran and Drakari support. That is very strong, and I can't see Primitive Painter really competing with that. Bream counter is now back to 4/4. This is not relevant. So it's probably not as easy, right, as like, oh, just remove. But the whole Bream counter, Coral, like that archetype does not have support. Like Coral shouldn't really be in the game. Bream counter shouldn't really be in the game. Flighty Scout, like sure you can have it with your Scourfin, but at least at higher MMR, this has no utility. That's sort of the problem when you make a change like this, but you don't change the whole type. You just have these leftover cards, and it really feels like Bream counter, Coral, these are leftover cards that don't really make sense right now in how you play Murloc. But they're here right now, so you know, Bream counter, honestly, it's used for tempo on tier 4, where sometimes you use Conch and then you get 2 Breams, and then you just, you know, like now Tad is back, you can buy a Tad, cycle a Tad, buff the Bream counters, and then immediately put them on the board for some tempo. That's usually how you use this card. Deathly Striker is back to Avenge 4. That makes total sense because undead are non-existent other than the Carapace Razor build, which we're going to see also get some love. So that's a good idea. Geist now gives 2 attack, so that is super relevant. We have seen this in the past when you turn a 1 into a 2, some very good things can happen, right? You scale twice as fast. So now that Geist is 2 attack, if you get Titus and you get Geist, you reborn the Geist, you can farm a lot of attack on your spells. And then if you combine that with Haunted Carapace, which is generated by Carapace Razor, again, you can reborn that, you can have Titus, you can proc that multiple times. All of a sudden, you are generating a very healthy undead board, or rather more damage than healthy, but you generate a very potent undead board where you essentially deal a way more damage than before. So I genuinely think this is going to be a comp now. This is going to be more common to see, where you see someone playing with Geist and Carapace Razor. We actually just saw it in the game before this. I played one game on a new patch. So yeah, that is good. I think that this definitely pushes the undead archetype forward. Yorick's Smite is now +2/+2 and then 6/6 for Goldens. I mean, the issue with this is that you had elemental scaling before this, right? So you had Locolar, which you could combine with Drakari. The issue with Yorick's Smite is that, unlike Locolar, you could scale the Locolar. You could say, oh, I will just cycle some elemental buffs, and then my Locolar will do more buffing. Yorick's Smite doesn't do that. Yorick's Smite is, oh, I'm 2/2. And you can golden at 6/6, but that's the hard cap, right? You can run Drakari, but you're not increasing the number. And Locolar, if you couldn't increase the number, was just not good enough. And even if you could increase the number, you would rather play Mana Surge. So that's my issue here with cards like Yorick's Smite, with cards like Gold Grubber. They're capped to the number on the card. You can't really boost it. And generally speaking, in high MMR, that's not a high enough number. But of course, if you buff this, then it becomes stupid tempo when you hit it in the mid game. Like, let's say you dig this, like at the end of your turn, your minions give 5/5, then it's broken because all of a sudden you're not losing a single fight for a while. But even in the very end game, just gaining 5/5 isn't really good enough. So that's the issue with these cards. Like, these are just more mid-game cards where if you triple into them, okay, put them on the board. That's good tempo. You just get +2/+2 to your board. It's kind of like tripling into Locolar. But then eventually you do want to swap that out for, you know, real scaling. Shipmaster Eudora, speaking of real scaling, it's now 8-8. I mean, again, if beasts are in and you have Titus and you can macaw this, but it's a very high roll comp because the nature of this comp is your stuff needs to be golden. If your stuff isn't golden, it's temporary, which is just tempo. So at the very least, you need a golden Titus to play this, which is a very high requirement. That's a very steep cost. Like, oh, don't play this unless you have a golden Titus. So pretty much all the times that I've seen this and played it, it's when I randomly got a golden Titus, or someone I saw playing it had randomly a golden Titus. And I was like, okay, well then you can run it. But, you know, it's pretty awkward. So it works with stuff like Golden Hammer. And of course, if you get something like Pilfered Lambs, you know, you can do it. But, you know, again, this struggles from the same thing where it's kind of just the number. But on the other hand, the Death Rattle, it's a little bit easier to manipulate because you can stack more Titus, you can stack more Macaw. So it can hit pretty hard under the right circumstances, but I don't think it's a meta comp, if that makes sense. Like we're still gonna just look for exponential elementals. We're still gonna be looking for Pirate Naga. We're still gonna be looking for, I guess, Menagerie, Rally stuff, Quillbore Rally, right? Anyways, let's move on. Improviser is now Avenge 2. That is better, but the whole card doesn't really make too much sense. If you're shop buffing and you're doing it with Improviser, it's kind of sad, right? You need to have some kind of a unfair shop buff going to be able to compete. You kind of need the tier 7 demon to buff your shop, or you need to do something with a lot of spell buffs and then you generate a lot of the staff that buffs the shop. Improviser isn't really it, but you know, it's more pickable now in the early game. It's like a Fellemental type card that's conditional, but can pop off harder than Fellemental now. Devout Hellcaller is 1-2. Again, that helps, right? That makes this card more pickable in the mid game. The issue is that you don't really want to have a demon board right now to build into demons, and if you don't really have a demon board, you're not going to pick up Devout Hellcaller, so that's the issue here. You're very restricted to when you want to buy this card, because you're not buying this card if your board doesn't have any demons on it, and even like one demon is pretty meh. So you would have to have a board full of demons, and you're not really pushing for a board full of demons, so that's sort of the issue where you rarely want to pick up this card. Sanguine Refiner, that is a huge one. So this now goes to 1-1 instead of 1-2. This is likely still very good. So I don't think this is suddenly going to make Quillbore unplayable. I don't think you're not going to want to triple into a Sanguine Refiner, but half the health is significant. That means that your stuff is going to die faster. So you also have the tier 4 Quillbore that puts 3 gems on itself. That now dies faster, so it doesn't get to keep hitting. Same with the Sanguine, that dies faster, it doesn't get to keep hitting. Your Bloodsnout buffs are half as much health. So it is a significant hit, but I don't think it suddenly makes the card unplayable or even bad. So I think you're still going to be pretty happy to play this. Divine Climber goes from 2-2 to 2-1. That's reasonable. This card is pretty silly in the mid game, so it's a fair nerf, and elementals in general are doing pretty well. Matriarch goes from 2 health to 1 health. I can understand that. That's a very strong card. However, I'm a little bit afraid that suddenly it becomes not very interesting to play. That would be my main concern. So I haven't played with it yet. I haven't seen anyone else play with it yet, but I've only played 1 game. So after today, I'll probably have a much better understanding. Like, do I still want it? Is it still useful? Is it still nice? Or is it just too slow now? Because I don't think we want to, introduce fewer compositions where we say, oh, now it's like just Elemental and Quillbore or, whatever. So yeah, I want to be careful with this because this was a very fun strategy to do. Just spam a lot of spells and watch the Matriarch buff. We don't want to reduce the number of viable compositions. Nerfs are supposed to increase that. So that's just something we have to be careful for here, if that's going to be the result or not. And then here, Stegodon goes to 1-1. So half the scaling on your Stegodon. I don't think Pultron is back in yet. I haven't seen a message about that. But Pultron was not disabled. Well, maybe not mainly disabled for Beast being OP. It was mainly disabled because it was bugged. So what would happen with Pultron is you would Wind Fury the Pultron, and then it would attack and attack twice because of Wind Fury, and then also regain its shield. The Pultron is not supposed to regain the Divine Shield on a Wind Fury hit, simply because the Wind Fury hit is a condition of the Avenge. So if the Avenge isn't triggered, it shouldn't be regaining the shield either. But that was what's happening. People were attacking with the Poltron because of the Avenge, regaining the shield. That makes sense. But then the Wind Fury procced, regaining the shield again. So if you're Wind Furying it, it's supposed to either attack twice but not regain the shield, or not attack twice at all because the Avenge might not be triggering the Wind Fury. Although I think it should be. Kind of complicated, but Stegodon nerfed, Poltron not back in to the best of my knowledge. So right now this should be pretty weak, like still pretty weak. Sanders removed from the secret culprit. That is good, but my god, just make my boy golden anything that's not a 7, please. It's not that hard of a change. Maybe coding it is hard, right? But like philosophically, it's not a difficult change at all. This was nerfed because you were goldening Zargiras with it, and you were popping off, and you were instantly goldening Moira. I get it. But make it target something that's a 6 or lower, so it just doesn't golden 7 drops. I think we all would be still very happy with that. You can still make golden Bran. This would feel like a real 7 drop. Right now, it is a waste of a 7 drop. It's barely better than the 5 drop that makes a pirate golden below tier 4, right? Or 4 or below. So very ugh. Then we have some quest changes. These are now banned in elemental lobbies, and that is because you could exponentially scale with them. Norgannon's reward would allow you to get Behemoth, and then you would sell Behemoth with Lava Lantern, print a bunch of Behemoths, and then scale like crazy. With Doubleheader, you could avalanche stats to the shop, and then you could buy that unit, effectively again, doubling your stats. With Anima Bribe, you could do the same thing. You could avalanche to the shop, and then you would sell your unit, which would buff the shop, and you would avalanche the unit, which would buff the shop again. So these 3 things were exponential scaling in elemental lobbies, and that's still pretty crazy. Now, you can still do that with Windfall. It's just far more difficult. It's far more difficult, but you can still exponentially scale with Windfalls, but that's basically just like Jeeve. I mean, Jeeve does that really well, but it's very difficult, very skill heavy. Then we have these things banned in beast lobbies. Again, I think that for now, that's not like too big of a deal. It's more for when Poltron comes back. But yes, double rally beasts was silly. Wind Fury Divine Shield beast was silly. So good to see that. And then we have some quest changes. So these are all more difficult to complete, which essentially just means that when it was 4 battle cry, now it might be 5 battle cry. It might not change for your specific, but it's a little vague, but in general, just more difficult. So add more quest requirements to get the quest rewards. Quaint Boutique is the cheap trinket, the lesser trinket. Jumbo Warehouse is the big trinket. Rushing Winds is the Wind Fury Divine Shield that we just saw. Double-headed reward is also what we just saw. You get double the buy for your first buy. And we have Righteous Charge, which is an insta attack. Doubleheader was very, very strong. It's still very strong, so I guess that's fair. Quaint Boutique, Jumbo Warehouse also felt a little bit too easy to complete. Yeah, I mean, all of this seems fair. Like, there's nothing that I disagree with. Then we have quests that are made easier to complete. Untold Riches, which is gain the 7 gold. Anima Bribe, which we also just saw, that's the sell quest. Snicker Snack triggers the battle cries on your board. Smelting Chamber makes a tier 1 golden, then a tier 2 golden. So that one always felt like it was a little bit too slow, like not really getting enough value from it. So I think that's a good one. Grim Freshener is the one where you get Avenge for a roll, but I've never picked that quest, and I think it's just garbage. So like maybe I'll pick it sometimes when I have an undead board, but maybe that's the problem. We're not really playing Beast, we're not really playing Undead, so that makes this roll quest a little bit more meh. Cookbook also just feels completely outdated, especially again high MMR, because it just doesn't scale fast enough compared to all the strategies we just like. Again, right, compared to Spell Murlocs. Oh yeah, I've plus 50-50 on my shop after a lot of work. Okay, end of turn I can just go brrr, add a few hundred stats to everything. Right, it's just not really comparable. Tumbling Disaster is another one of those quests. It buffs your tokens. Too slow, not good enough. So, like, I would rather just have these quests removed, because it feels like every time I roll them, I just have 1 fewer quests to choose from. Perpetual Incantation, same thing. Play a bunch of cards to get +1/+1 on my spell damage. Like, I would much rather just have a bunch of money and cycle the Murloc, or play the the Demon Dragon on tier 6, or, you know, whichever other way, or play a Blue Whelp. I can play a Blue Whelp with Wind Fury and gain 2 spell health per fight, or more. And if it's golden, like 4. Or I can do Perpetual Incantation, where I might get +1/+1 per turn, and I don't have another quest. Like, again, right? When we compare these things, like, what is this? Why is this in my quest pool? So for this one, I would rather just remove Cookbook, Tumbling Disaster, Perpetual Incantation. Like, the others are fine. Like, Anima Bribe, maybe. Anima Bribe is really lame. Like, I don't like that one either. But then we are talking a little bit more about taste and, you know, whether you like to play that or not. But I would much rather play with a smaller quest pool, because I can understand where they're coming from here. You know, we want to be creative, I want to introduce more quests. Again, I totally get that. It feels worse, I guess, if there are fewer quests, but I think that when you have these bad quests, you have fewer quests anyway, because people won't pick them. So is it not better to just have more Doubleheader games, more Pilfered Lambs games, more Sinstone games? These are super fun quests to play with, even though a lot of them are very difficult, and I'm fine with that. I want to at least have the chance of, like, for instance, now I went forth with a Pilfered Lambs game because I couldn't quite get it fast enough, but at least it's fun. But having these quests, it's kind of meh. And then we have some armor changes. We're not going to go over these in detail. We're just going to talk about some that stand out. For the most part, this is because quests are easier when you have a lot of armor. So a lot of these heroes were overperforming in their stats simply because people were taking, and myself included, were just taking 20 and 18 armor heroes because I will not press the hero power a single time, just give me the easier quest. And that was enough to replace the hero power. But from these, Death Speaker went from 20 armor to 17, so that's like probably a decent 20 armor hero. Tarim a little bit less. AFK went from 20 to 16. So that's a very big nerf, but AFK was very good because they made some really strong 3-drops. Blue Whelp, the Bigwig Pirate, and the Greedy Snake Tongue. Like, these are like insane 3-drops to get, especially early on tier 3 or on turn 3 or turn 4. Because these are scaling or money or both, and it's just very, like, especially Bigwig was just so insane to get on AFK. So totally deserved nerf. Sylvana's also from 20 armor to 18, so I don't think there's anything that really stands out. Like Lady Vosh, I guess I wasn't picking, and I probably am not picking 13 armor Lady Vosh. So there's a few in here where I'm like, whatever, I'm not picking that anyway. But now we have heroes that got buffed, so these have more armor now. For the most part, a lot of these were unplayable simply because low armor means very difficult quest. Snake Eyes was sort of a perfect example where Snake Eyes had 5 armor and it's like an uncompletable, like you get like spend 120 gold or some bullshit, right? It's like, oh, I basically the quest requirement is die. Like, you're not completing that, right? That's crazy. Your Snake Eyes have 7 armor now. So, I mean, that's probably still unpickable. Like, from 5 to 7, I don't know, bro. I don't think Snake Eyes hero power helps out enough. Scenarios getting more armor is fun. ETC going to 16 matters a lot because this hero was already playable, in my opinion, in lobbies where you want to go 3-on-3. Again, for the Bigwig, for the Blue Whelp, for the Greedy Snake Tongue. And ETC loves going 3-on-3 because you get a tier 3 buddy. Bran 17 armor, also pretty nutty in Murloc lobbies because Bran is super needed for the Murloc mycologist's interaction. Shadowrock 10 armor, still difficult quests. Guff 10 armor. Guff, I think you could already kind of pick with 8 armor simply because you could take the easiest quest and then farm 6 drops with his hero power. So yeah. Gallywix 8 armor. I think Gallywix is also pickable. So the big difference between Gallywix and Snake Eyes is with Gallywix, you can just keep buying and selling to complete your quest, and Gallywix really likes doing that. Snake Eyes, you just get the big money boost 1 turn, which is really good in the power level meta, but in the meta where you have to complete your quest, it's just not really worth the low armor. All right, guys, and those are the changes for the hotfix. I don't think this is going to solve all the problems, but it's definitely a good step in the right direction, and they've already communicated that, you know, they're ready to do more changes if their data tells them that something is too strong, but they've addressed the biggest outliers in their opinion. For high MMR play, again, this is always a little bit more difficult simply because the meta isn't the same at, you know, 5,000 MMR or 10,000 MMR. I can still see the Murloc build being pretty insane, where you just farm the spell buff. Elementals honestly did not really take a hit because Vine Climber getting a small nerf is kind of whatever. So I still think Elementals are going to be really strong with Lava Lantern. But, you know, we'll see. It's a good step. I like the Quillboar nerf at least. That's good. I hope it's enough that it's not oppressive anymore. All right.